Well, they are rapturous at Old Trafford after a 5-1 win for Manchester United over Leeds United on match day one. Shaka Hislop, we saw more goal attempts in this fixture last season than any other across the entire Premier League. Wouldn't surprise anybody watching the first quarter of an hour in the second half. In that decisive stanza, what stood out to you for United?
Right, for me, United were just at their attacking best. It's something that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer promised in the offseason. Many of us are waiting to see exactly how that would pan out. And United delivered as Solskjaer promised. That being said, it was up against Leeds, and we know whenever you play against Leeds, it's going to be an open game. There are going to be chances at both ends. But that's what you saw. You saw United never really being afraid of Leeds' attacking thrust, of taking the game to them, pressing them high up the park, willing the ball back. And then, most impressively, you saw all their big names step up in a manner, all in the same game, that I don't think we've seen for quite some time. Bruno Fernandes with the hat-trick, Paul Pogba 4 assists, Greenwood with probably the goal of the lot, and even Fred getting in on the act. That is an all-round outstanding Manchester United performance.
Shaka, let's talk about some of those stars. You mentioned Bruno Fernandes. He's led all of the Premier League in goal involvement since joining with United. Hat trick today to kick things off. What is it about him and his style that has made him so prolific at Old Trafford?
Well, sitting just in behind the front man, and today it was Greenwood, ordinarily he finds himself a little bit on his own, a little bit isolated. All the creativity has to come through him. But with Pogba playing a lot higher up, Daniel James also playing in a similar line, you had that linking up between Pogba and Bruno Fernandes playing on that same line that I don't think we've seen for quite some time. And while Daniel James hasn't really got himself in the headlines, I thought he was outstanding on the right-hand side. With Jadon Sancho looking on from the sidelines, he was introduced later on. So it speaks of how good United were and maybe how much better they can be. And that's with no disrespect at all to Daniel James, who I said performed incredibly well. But then all of a sudden, with Pogba and Bruno Fernandes sharing that creativity in behind the front line, you saw Pogba's passing, his range, his understanding of Bruno Fernandes and Bruno Fernandes' clever runs. And then Bruno Fernandes, as cool as you like in front of goal, took every single one of his chances with such aplomb. It's almost disrespectful to say that. Let's keep in mind, Pogba could have made it, could open the scoring. It would have made for so much worse reading for Leeds.
And Bruno Fernandes, the first season opening hat trick for United since 1977. Lou Marcari, and for context, the British transfer record fee was broken that year, £495,000. It's been a while. Shaka, let's keep talking about Paul Pogba. He had 3 assists all of last year. He had 4 in not even 90 minutes. He got subbed off. For you, does this signify something of a philosophical shift for him in an approach, or is it a fun anomaly and an encouraging sign for United supporters through 90 minutes?
The one thing we've always known and said is Paul Pogba is a true world-class talent. In a United shirt, you just haven't seen it with enough consistency. Too often he's sat just in front of the back four and been that link between the defense and midfield, where I've always felt that he was at his best playing higher up the park. That's where he kind of rose to prominence playing for Juventus. And it was Andrea Pirlo, remember, who sat in front of the back four, and Paul Pogba played a little bit higher up. But a lot more was asked of him in the United shirt, where he had to be the link. But now, Fred and McTominay, who just continues to impress me more and more every time I see him play, are the ones tasked with sitting just in front of that back four. And as I mentioned before, Pogba now playing up alongside Bruno Fernandes as opposed to sitting in behind. So now you're seeing him at his attacking best, being involved in those movements. And when you have somebody with the footballing IQ of Bruno Fernandes, that's when Paul Pogba shines. And make no mistake about it, it will be Bruno Fernandes in the headlines, but Paul Pogba definitely shone today. Some of his passing was simply breathtaking. That's the Pogba we know in a Juventus shirt. That's the Pogba we've seen in a France shirt. That's the Paul Pogba we've all been hoping to see with a little bit more consistency in a Manchester United shirt.
Yeah, it's a spirited debate for man of the match for sure when you have a hat trick and then 4-assist game, which is certainly
you got to give it to
more
Fernandes.
uncommon.
You got to give it to the hat trick man.
Not spirited for Shaka.
Yeah.
All right, Shaka, something that's less debatable, the impressive nature of Mason Greenwood in his United tenure, just the third teenager to have 30 goals in all competitions as a teenager, joining Norman Whiteside and George Best. Decent company. He doesn't turn 20 until the 1st of October. What do you hope to see in his continued development in the early stages of this season?
Mason Greenwood is a scary prospect who I think only gets better playing alongside or training alongside Edinson Cavani, who's been one of the best to have done it. Greenwood, we've spoken about his talents. It's difficult to tell whether he's right or left-footed. He does everything so naturally with either foot. I mentioned earlier, Phil, that I thought Greenwood's goal was the best of the 5. The pass from Paul Pogba, simply fantastic. But here you have a 19-year-old running away from a defender. The ball inch perfect. You know that defender is on your back in full flight and takes that ball in stride, left-footed, past an advancing goalkeeper within a fraction of an inch inside the far post. He made that look so simple. You don't have to be a striker to know how difficult a task that was. As good as the other goals were, as good as Paul Pogba and his passing was, as good as each of Bruno Fernandes' finishes were, this was, without question, the pick of the bunch in terms of finishing. Running at full speed, defender at your back, having to take that in stride, the smallest of windows to hit, and yet somehow he does it. That's the finish of an Edinson Cavani in his prime. But we are talking about a young man who is yet to hit his own and probably won't for some time. That speaks of the potential that Greenwood has.
And certainly divergent roads for the season opener for United and Leeds. And Shaka, you've been in many a Premier League changing room. I want to point back to 1999 for West Ham. You boys beat Spurs and then go on a tear through August. Conversely, in 2000, lose at Stamford Bridge and then get off to a pretty rough start and I think finish 15th. 1 of 38. Is this a tone setter for United and Leeds, or is this something of, again, just one of 38?
Without question, it's a tone setter for Manchester United. This is a decent Leeds team, and to win 5-1 at home. Let's remember last season how, especially in the early part of the season, how much Manchester United struggled at home. And yet this is how you come out of the gates. You are feeling really good about what's to come. You look at the fixture lists, nothing really jumping out in the next few weeks. So you get off to a good start. You get Jadon Sancho back up to match fitness and match sharpness. You've got Rafael Varane, who was introduced to the Old Trafford crowd. He would be given time to bed in before he's truly tested. So if you're sitting in that United dressing room, you're really excited about the prospect of this season to come. If you're Leeds, it's a blip. And as good as it is for United, it's not the converse for Leeds. This is who Leeds are. When Leeds play, they're going to create, but they're also going to concede. You saw that all of last season. That's in their DNA. Bielsa is not going to change that. This is just a blip in the road that they will get over. I don't think Leeds or their fans should lose any sleep over this.
Shaka, last question from me. We saw a glimpse of Sancho as a sub. As a young boy, spent a lot of time on the other end of Manchester. We saw Varane pre-match with the shirt. How uncomfortable should Manchester City and Chelsea be with United now 3 points and +4 in the goal differential through one match?
Well, right now, the favourites, and I still have Man City as favourite to win the league. I have Chelsea as second favourite in that regard. You're twitching in your seat after what you saw. But those two haven't taken the pitch just yet so far this season. There's a lot to promise from Chelsea as European champions, who just signed Romelu Lukaku. I think that makes them a whole lot better than Chelsea we saw last season. Manchester City, you know what you're going to get from them regardless. And with continued speculation around Harry Kane, again, that takes them onto a different level. But you know that Manchester United are a force, or are a greater force to be reckoned with than we've seen for the last couple of seasons. And keeping in mind that Manchester United finished second last season, I think this makes them, they are even better than they were, which says to City and Chelsea that they, as a result, if they are to resist Manchester United and how good they certainly seem to be, they have to up their game as well. But they would know that already.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.